So, one of the most memorable fishing trips I've had in the last few seasons was definitely a trip I had over at Great Barrier with my mate Tom. Um, I hadn't seen Tom for ages, and so it was just awesome to catch up with him and his family, and to go fishing as well was awesome. So we had decided we were going to go for a land-based trip, which is obviously what I'm all about, and we embarked on this hell of a walk into the spot. It was yeah, it was unlike any walk I've done before to a land-based spot. Not only in terms of distance, but just in terms of the terrain. It was the tide was too high, so we had to like go up and over these mad hills. We had taken way too much gear, like just ridiculous amounts of gear, half of which we didn't even end up using. A whole heap of bait and burley, like it was just ridiculous. All of our water, we could have camped out for probably 2 weeks based on the gear we had. We had talked to the ute before we took off on the big walk, and we were tossing whether or not to take the net with us, which we decided not to, just because we already had so much gear. Like we literally couldn't carry anything else with us. The other thing I was not sure of is taking the soft bait rod. I hadn't done a lot of soft baiting off the rocks at that point. I'd sort of dabbled back at home in Waiheke, but I thought, we sort of talked about it, but it was before I had any of the Daiwa gear. I had a Shimano reel, and I had a ridiculously whippy soft bait rod of Tom's that he had lent to me. It was like I don't know what, I can't remember what it was. It was like a 3 to 5 kilo whippy as noodle, totally, not up for the task really. It was like a kid's bloody wharf rod. Heaps of fun though, like the action on it was crazy. So yeah, that was the matchup. In the braid was, just real standard off the boat braid. It was, probably for, 12-pound braid at a guess. And then the leader was, 15-20 pound max was the leader. So really sort of undergun stuff. Of course, that's the setup that I hooked this fish on. And I knew straight away that I was just in all sorts of trouble, because obviously with the really light gear, there was a mad swell as well, so straight away I knew this was just going to be really touch and go. And initially it was like mad runs, and I'd get a little bit back, and it would, but I couldn't see what the fish was. But as Tom sort of came up near me, got the burley rope out the way, and it was not long after that we got our first glimpse of this fish near the surface.
Oh shit! Bro! Fuck! We're gonna have to... Hello! Ah! Look at that! Woohoo!
And we just about lost it because we saw this massive bronze shape like looming through the whitewash. And yeah, all of a sudden it dawned upon me that this fish was probably going to be up there with the best that I've ever caught. So from there it went from sort of having a laugh about hooking something really good, not really knowing what it was, to suddenly just freaking out because this is, fish of a lifetime, and it's on the most ridiculously light gear, and there's really crazy wash, there's no landing net. Yeah, so it was just a complete scene. And eventually the fish really sort of started to slow up, and I knew that I was just getting the better of it. But then obviously the next problem was, how the hell to land this thing with this crazy swell that was happening. So yeah, Tommo's there. He had an initial go. So there was like a swell that came up, and I think I yelled out, "Yeah, this is the time, man. Have a go." It wasn't the time at all. It was completely not the time, and we completely cooked it. Had a crack at the tail, missed it, and I think it was either the first. I can't remember if it was the first or the second attempt where missed it, and then the fish like sort of tumbles down the side of the rocks, and I don't know how the hell the line didn't part ways. So he goes in there and tries to time it with the swell, and just unlucky with the swell. It picks him up, knocks him off his feet, and it almost played out in slow motion as I was watching it. Like to see my mate just tumbling down the rocks, face first into the rocks, just getting completely and utterly munched on the way down. He's in the water, I'm like, "You right, bro?" He managed to come back up like a bloody wet cat. Didn't have the fish, like he could have at least grabbed the fish. That was, fairly poor from him.
Behind you. You right?
There was just enough of a swell that came in and he got in sort of waist deep. By this stage the fish was, really up on its side. And yeah, he managed to get in there.
Grab it tight, bro! Yes! Oh, yeah, boy! Are you alright, bro?
Yeah, bro, I'm good.
The feeling was just so good. Yeah, we were just chahooing. Partly because of the size of the fish, but I guess it was just the whole scenario, how it all played out. The fact that I had hooked this thing on the lightest, most ridiculous rod, the swell, not having a net, being a PB fish, and then finally getting it onto the rocks and just, both of us just losing the plot. It was a really, obviously a beautiful fish. It went 79 centimetres. My holy grail of fish was always an 80 centimetre, which I've now managed to tick that box. But I think as far as the most memorable, this fish, it certainly had it all. And then we managed to, we managed to measure it, get it back. Oh, it gives me goosebumps thinking about the whole trip now. It's not always about the big fish, and it's not always about just the trophy fish. It's for me, it's always, for me, it's about the whole experience, and it's it's the things you see and the things you hear and all those senses, and hanging out with your best mates, doing the thing that you love the most. It's pretty special, and that trip will certainly go down in the memory bank as one of the best. So that's my memorable fishing trip from the recent seasons. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.